of insights today, a lot of valuable knowledge. I'm going to admit I'm a bit biased towards this panel because Forbes, we love our numbers, we love our facts. But one of the things that I especially love about having people dedicated in the social impact element is that they're not something we can quantify, but we feel the effects of all the amazing work they do. So I don't know if you want to quickly just introduce yourselves and where you work.
So yes, assalamu alaikum all. My name is Mu'tasim Al-Awlaqi. I'm the co-founder of Nemo Hub. And Nemo Hub basically is a sustainable travel package that offers sustainable travel packages within the tourism industry. And we really believe in sustainability, and that's really the core of our business. And hopefully, that's what I'll be talking about today. Thank you.
In other words, they are the best tourism. Like, you travel and you get to do good in the universe, which is just wonderful. Ramzi, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ramzi Malat, and I'm a visual artist, Lebanese born, and I am based in between London and Beirut. My practice is multidisciplinary, and I try as much as I can to create a practice in relation to the socially engaged viewpoints so that the art world isn't so much a niche and an elitist sphere. And I try as much as I can as well to have an impact in society through the arts, because I know that that is one of the few heritages that, whether they are tangible or intangible, can surpass our lifetimes.
Okay, now the next person, she is the world's top squash player. And I don't know if I can say anything more than that, Nouron.
So I'm Nouron Gohar. I'm 25 years old, from Egypt. I've just moved to the US last year after marrying my husband, Ziad. So I'm a professional squash player, but I'm a construction engineer as well. I graduated from AUC last fall, 2020. With high honors, which I'm very proud of. Basically, I just hope I can inspire young generation, especially girls in the Middle East. I mean, in Egypt, we're doing great. Not only, we have always been doing great in the men's game, but in the women's game lately, it has been amazing. And I'm really proud to be an Egyptian and being a squash player right now during these times. So yeah, it's good.
Perfect. Now, Naila, you work with education.
Talk about a hard act to follow, though. Well, it's a privilege to be sitting next to you. My name's Naila. I'm the co-founder of Mirai Partners and Casa de Luisa Group. Luisa is my grandmother's name. I am an educator first, and what we do is we have a platform that helps governments transform their public schools through monitoring and evaluation, through what I like to call my co-founder and I's vision for what education should be, and doing that at a systemic level. So we work with primarily governments across Africa, Middle East, South and Central Asia, recently Ukraine. So we do work with their Ministry of Education, and yeah, it's my life, my purpose, and you'll always see me in the sector.
Perfect. So they're quite an interesting group because I think we've covered everything. Like, we've covered tourism, we've covered education, but let's start off with travel. You have one of the very unique models because you allow people to travel, but with the purpose of empowering. How does that work?
So yeah, thank you so much for the question. So basically, I'll just give quick highlights of microeconomic figures about what's the tourism industry. So if you're looking at mainly our company, Nemo Hub, is targeting the GCC travelers, GCC either citizens or residents, but mainly the GCC countries, whoever live there. You're talking about almost $40 billion spent a year by GCC travelers abroad. You talked about a big numbers, a very rich industry, and yet it really lacks a lot of social impact. It lacks a lot of sustainability into it. And we're living in an era that sustainability is the core of business growth. A business that doesn't have a purpose, it will really struggle. Maybe they will look at it as a quick margin, but in the long term, they will really definitely struggle. So this is what we're really trying to fit in and fill the gap. So we came in offering sustainable tourism in this sector. So how we do it, basically, we operate in different countries. Mainly we operate in developing countries. So our segment or what we're offering is more of adventurous travel. And this is what the new generations really want to do. They do want to go to London or Paris, or they go to the typical shopping destinations. They prefer going through the adventurous travels. So we made it sustainable by giving some percentage of our revenues towards donation. So far, so if you come with us for 1 week package, you will be doing some volunteering hours, part of that package that goes to the communities we go to. So you want to go to Zanzibar, for example, our biggest destination that we sell, and so you go there, you go through all the tourism activities that this destination hosts, as well as you giving back. So we built almost more than 200 classrooms across Zanzibar, Morocco, Nepal, Bali. We have contributed, gave access to almost 10,000 kids who came from underprivileged kids. And we have really raised a model that is a successful social enterprise model that shows you being a purpose-driven business, being a business who gives back, does not really harm on the profit. It's really a long-term strategy. It is a growth strategy, especially at this time where most of the venture capitalists, most of the funds that will go towards sustainability. So building a model based on sustainability, building a model based on giving aspects is really a long-term growth strategy. So this is what we're really doing, yeah.
Amazing work. Okay, now I know for artists it's slightly different. Making an impact is not necessarily the same as the travel sector. So what was your journey like?
Well, I have to say, as an artist, it's not something that you inherently learn. It's more given to you in the sense that you have a critical understanding of the world that you kind of always practice with. And I have always had like an inclination towards the material world, in the sense that I felt like us as human beings always use our minds to create meaning from everything. And I was inspired by a lot of symbols, and that's actually how we see the world in its own right. And so what I wanted to actually make in my practice and to engage with very much was this search for origins. And so I've moved away very much from the origin of like this our own existence to the social aspect of a person, and how you create the individual, its identity, nation building as well, and how you create associations to create your own self and your position as well in the world. And what I really want to focus on, especially as a creative, is that you are not just this lone creature in the studio. You always have to be engaged with your society and with your cultural background and communities, because it is very easy to just be seen as just practicing on the side. And I have to say, like, it's a very long and arduous process to be an artist, because it's never gonna end for you. You don't really retire. So if you really go into any creative field, you kind of do it because it's a purpose. It's more of like a vocation as well. So it's not really just seen as a profession. And I think that really allowed me to find myself in it, and also be a mirror to the society I am in. And in these challenging times, I think us artists need to work with all individuals in all of the rankings of societies to make sense of what we're doing, and also engage in the problems that we already have, because it takes creatives to find solutions.
Definitely, I agree with that 100%. And I think this is something that you might also have in common, because the creative path or a sport path is not necessarily traditional. It takes a lot of hard work to pave the way and actually make it. And you almost backed away from the sport. You almost decided not to pursue this. So tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so it's a very long story before actually having these dark times. I had a very I would say like optimistic journey at the very beginning. I was still a kid, like 17 years old. I started playing professionally when I was 14 years old, traveling the world. And so I guess from traveling and being all over the place, and from China to the US, and just traveling by myself, I gained a lot of experience, and starting winning matches, gaining more experience in life in general that not a normal kid in school will gain actually. And then when I was 17, I decided that that's what I want to do. I want to turn pro. I want to be a professional squash player, which is quite unusual in Egypt to be professional athletes in general. Now the idea is getting more and more common, but especially for girls, I would say. And honestly, my parents were very, very supportive about it. Sports has always been something very important in our life. Yeah, and then, so at 17 years old, I beat my idol, Nicole David. She was awarded #1 for 9 years. So I knew, oh, maybe I can become a good player. And from being ward number 17, in just like 6 months, I became ward #2, and I was still 18 years old. And then I was winning, being the underdog, the youngster, and everything was going like really la vie en rose, like everything was really nice. And then suddenly I started to lose, and I'm like, oh my god, that's a shock. I can't really like understand what's going on. I was working hard, I was doing everything right, but I couldn't just accept the fact of losing. And then I dropped from #2 to #8 in just 5-6 months, and then I was like, oh, I'm just hitting rock bottom. I'm not doing the right things. I just think I need to step back and just take some rest from the sport. And then during a certain match, something clicked, and I just remembered my passion. I remembered why I started playing squash. And yeah, sometimes when you hit rock bottom, you just see that the only way is up, and nothing worse can happen. And yeah, it was just a lot to take. I was just 19 or 20 years old, and having to decide on my future. I was actually questioning everything, even my construction major. I was like, am I doing the right thing? Everything was going really well, and now everything is going really bad. But life is all about ups and downs, and when I look back, I'm very grateful for these dark times, because it didn't only make me like a better squash player, it actually made me a stronger person, I think.
That is so inspiring. Honestly, it is extremely inspiring to see you pursue something even when you weren't winning. It's just for the love of it. And this brings me to another point. It's social impact. You can't really measure it, but I think we're taught to always sort of look for numbers, prove somehow we're making a difference. And I know you've experienced that with the solutions you're offering a lot of the ministries. How do you monitor impact?
So I work in the education space, and I just want to say that as a teacher, I'm sitting with a panel of students I would love to see be my students in the future. Because what you see here is really proof and the best kind of data that you can have when you see people thriving and happy in the things that they love. And yes, so what we do is help governments really transform education. A lot of people have claims around transforming education and creating impact, but very few people really talk about what that means. Like, how do you actually measure impact? What does that look like? So for me, I really do mean it that these 3 individuals are a measurement of success.
I'm joining in that class, by the way.
Yeah. Sorry. 4.
Thank you.
And so when we work with social impact, it's very important that even our business is built on this idea of your bottom line as a business is dependent on the impact you make. In the previous panel, they talked about how we need to solve the biggest challenges in the world, right? And social impact is solving the biggest challenges in the world. So how do we solve these biggest challenges in the world, and how do we measure how much we're doing? And I think that's when we work with governments, again, I keep trying to get to this point and then I get sidetracked. This is what happens when you have concentration issues. But when you break it down for governments, what we look at, for example, within the education space is student learning. And there are many different multiple factors within student learning. And why is that important? Because if we don't measure the right kind of data, we're never going to know if our interventions are working. And that goes for in art. As you mentioned, it's very difficult to know what your impact is. Mm-hmm. But there are different variety of different measures you can use. So, I mean, and he would be best informed. So I think that's also a big part, is that when we can create qualitative and quantitative data to, and we should be doing it, because social impact is not a nice to have, it's a must have. And any big business today is creating social impact. And I do think that there needs to be accountability and measurement on existing businesses to show what kind of impact they're having. Because if they don't do that, that's when we get into issues with big corporates, or we assign the wrong responsibility or the wrong acclaims or accolades to people. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Perfect. It's so much knowledge. I'm trying to absorb everything. But I specifically like that you touched on the idea that there are challenges we need to overcome. And I will direct this question to you. You're not only helping people face their own challenges, but you as a fledgling company, as someone who's under 30, you still are facing challenges and you will face many more. So talk to me how that works in the tourism sphere.
For travel and tourism, one of the biggest challenges, obviously, COVID. When COVID hits, that's it. That's the game over. It's about how strong your cash flow to survive. And I don't think there is any bigger challenge that you can face in the travel industry than a COVID can hit.
How did you overcome it?
And we were lucky enough to have a healthy cash flow that sustained us for another 2 years. We were almost to really die out and sacrifice a lot of our equities to investors. But we went through a lot of challenges. There was a lot of sacrifices for 1.5 years. But luckily enough, COVID taught us a good lesson. Came back after COVID even better than what we used to be before. And the reason for that is people really started to understand when COVID hits is they need a purpose in their life. COVID taught people to be humble. COVID taught people to really understand what's their purpose. And this is what we really received. We came back. I hope that we just started back to really healthy cash flow, and we hope to really grow and to compete in the international market very well. And one of the main dominant competitors in the market is G Adventures. It's a company with a annual revenue of almost $350 million, company based out in Canada. And we want to be the next G Adventures for the Middle East, and this is what we're really targeting. And hopefully, I think there is no challenge that any travel company will face as much as COVID or whatever disease that can spread. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I also know that someone else documented some socioeconomic challenges in their documentary. So what was that process like?
Well, it's actually interesting talking about a documentary. I think that is one of the ways you actually can quantify the amount of social impact you have just by actually recounting and also documenting those experiences just from the front lines. So my documentary actually is like the culmination of around 2 years of just shooting in a very volatile and disruptive climate in Lebanon during the revolution, and also after the port explosion all the way to the 1 year anniversary. It was a very interesting methodology of working because you are literally on the front lines creating those relationships that will down the line make or break a historical understanding of what has happened. And I think that in many ways is something we are very challenged in the region, because we do not have the proper archiving systems. We are very easily in tune with the collective amnesia, and I try as much as I can to kind of counteract actually cognitive dissonance. This is how we allow for ourselves to be subsumed as societies. And so what I try to do with the documentary is to discuss the situation that is very much always in the media seen in the capital, but from the periphery. So from people who are outside talking about these daily life incursions that also have a relationship to large global issues. And I think in many ways this has its own weight universally, because it does speak of the inherent nature of suffering and also human experience. So at the same time that I am kind of showcasing the very highly specific nature of the country I am born in, I'm also kind of bridging the gap between how do us as societies continue, and heritage in its own right, tangible or intangible, can literally be the solution and the problem depending on how we see it. And so the documentary will hopefully stand as a testament that all of us are meaning-making machines, and also documenting the times we live in. And so that is a quantity that I think will be very useful for artists to qualify and kind of understand their impact.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we're going to ask Nouron to bring some light back to the conversation. I want to know a piece of advice that you would give anybody sort of aiming to take the unconventional path and make a difference in something that's not usual, not something we see in society.
Yeah, it might seem like a bit cliche, but I just think that the main thing is never give up. But it's really true. Like at the very beginning, a lot of coaches didn't really believe I can make it through to the top 10 nationally, not even internationally, because I started not very. I mean, 9 years old is not old, but but in Egypt, squash, usually they started when they were 5 or 6, and everyone was like, "Yeah, you're not gonna make it through." And I just think that if you really truly believe in yourself, no one, yeah, for sure, you have to have a lot of people around you pushing you a bit and helping you out, but if it doesn't come from you, it will never come. And success at the very beginning is not very pleasant, especially to people. They don't really believe in it. They don't really. They're not always happy about it. You're gonna always face criticism. So yeah, just keep pushing, and yeah, you're gonna sometimes as well. You can be your own enemy, and you can have some self-doubt, not really believing in yourself. So do not listen to your demons, and just keep pushing and strive for your dreams.
We're going to hire you as like a TED Talk expert. Anytime anybody's having a bad day, we'll just call you now.
I just want to say like a very fun fact. Yesterday I was rehearsing with my husband. And I was telling him what I have to say, and he's like, whenever you get desperate and you start crying out, just read what you have wrote and what you're thinking. Like you're gonna inspire people. Just tell yourself. So sometimes I don't really. I'm not that optimistic. I don't think the same way, and it's okay. We all have really bad times. So the most important thing is to not give up.
Absolutely. Okay, now looking to the future, you are shaping young minds, and you're future-proofing countries. And you're aiming to future-proof them for the next 20 years. So talk to us about what the future holds for us.
So I'm going to start with some dark news and then go to the light. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Just to put into perspective. So I come at it from the education lens. I think we can all agree that education is not something we can ignore. Just sending children to schools or building schools is not enough. And I'm tired of hearing that. In fact, most of our government budgets go to building school buildings. Very little is left over for teachers and students. Now, let me put that into the kind of global context. We have about 1.3 billion students entering over the next couple of years by 2030 into K-12 and higher ed. What does that mean? We need an additional 150 million teachers per year to keep up with that globally. That is what we need to be focusing on. I've actually slightly forgotten the question you've asked me.
You're doing good. Keep going.
But that is the problem that we're dealing with. And how are we addressing that? That's why right now it's so important to have education solutions that are rooted in the actual cause that we're facing. And without that, what we're going to face is, and this is the sad truth, and it's similar to climate in the sense that if we have students unskilled in the correct jobs, by the way, the World Economic Forum's prediction of X number of jobs are going to change is wrong. And I like to say that at every conference because it's used a lot, but it's not rooted in reality. I think it was like 80% of jobs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not true. But we do have a skilling issue. And if we don't address that skilling issue, we're going to have incredibly high unemployment. What happens when we have high unemployment? Conflict that arises from poverty, wars, famine. There are so many different issues that we are going to face if we don't focus on providing skilled education. It's not about teaching everyone English, math, and science. We need to forget about that. We need to think about the actual skills that we need. A lot of people talk about creative thinking, but what does that mean? Can anyone here really accurately say what creative thinking is? It means so many different things. You need artists, because artists are creative thinkers, right? So it's really essential that we have to completely rethink this. Now, it sounds like a huge task. It isn't. We're doing it through a platform that helps governments. The ideal way to shape this is public-private partnerships. is government's endorsement. And what's wonderful, and I can say this about the continent, is that the most hopeful, encouraging, and cooperative governments have been in sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh.
Because we work with them. In fact, we are transforming Lagos, the Lagos state's 19,000 schools as we speak over the next 5 years. What we're going to see through our platform is actually we're going to be measuring school improvement by the right kind of indicators to ensure employability, because Nigeria is in a unique situation. They have an incredibly high youth population. If we don't skill them and we don't think about them, we're looking at massive conflict in the next couple of years. So it's really essential that we're rooted in solutions that are indicators of progress that we need, and we stop thinking about social impact as just charity and nonprofit. Every good business is a social impact business. From social media to the metaverse to whatever there is. So, and everyone here cares about education. I'm sure they do. Everyone has a heart for education. So I think it's really, if you're working with government right now, it's about promoting and really helping governments make that decision. So if you're voting, vote for education.
Stay in school, kids.
Just to add one thing as well, like just to define creative thinking, it is actually a disruption, a continuous disruption, and also critical thinking that actually allows you to embed yourself in your own projection of the future and potential into every sector. And I think this is very important that every business should know this, that the creative field is the only market that can prolifer to an extent unimaginable and lead and also weigh every business for its own name.
I just want to say, just to his credit, that one of the key skills that we're looking at, and people don't know this, but the skills of art, skills of sports, resilience, critical thinking, these fall into what we call the STEAM skills. People identify science and engineering. It's not about science and engineering. It's about how you were taught and how you practice that. And the only way to do that is by actually immersing yourself in the education. I just want to say that, especially to aspiring parents, don't push your children into being a doctor. Push your children into being a medical practitioner. Ask them why they want to do it. Encourage them to actually practice different aspects of medicine, or even make them do art on the body. That's, these are different ways, and I think it's important that everyone, especially aspiring parents and parents, really look into this so they can bring it home.
I have bad news. The panel, we ran out of time, but these insights and these words are just absolutely amazing. And the good news, guys, they're under 30. So just imagine what they're going to achieve in the coming years. I encourage all of you to just follow them and follow their journey, because you are truly inspiring. Thank you so much.